Hey, all you guys out there and girls too, I hope, and say hello. And we're going to get into a little clip here that we're going to talk about like we usually do. And William, say hi. Say
Hi.
hi like a dog. Say hi. Say hi, William.
It's like a fucking puppet on the string. Yes, Todd. We'll say hi to the people. Hi, people.
Okay. Hi, people. I hope everybody's having a good time. Let me just get right into this and play this clip, and then we'll roll.
There's 3 words that truly resonate with women. Now, guys, they may think this doesn't matter because you think she already knows, but it does matter, even if she already knows. So what are the 3 most important words you can say to her? And here's a hint. It's not I love you, and it's not you complete me. It's I choose you. Those 3 words are incredibly powerful and connect with her on a very deep level. When you disconnect from her, she may feel like you're connecting with someone else, making her feel insecure and unsafe. So guys, to bring out the very best in her, use these words often. Text them, say them, write them in a card. For a woman, hearing that she is chosen over and over again is an amazing feeling.
Okay. Yeah, she's Danielle Haig or Hage, whatever pronounce her name. She's got a website, so check her out. I think she has some pretty interesting things to say in these little clips. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I don't know, you and I talked about it a little bit before we chose this one, and it hit me not quite as well as I thought it would until you kind of rephrased it to say I prioritize you, and that definitely felt more.
It was you are my priority.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it starts. I mean, to go into that usual I statement, you statement. I mean, it's always if somebody says you first. It's usually a bad thing, but in this case, it's not. It's like the I choose you sounded a little bit narcissistic to me. It doesn't now, but it did when I first saw it.
But I get your point because it's about, like there's something like if that's important to you, it's because there's something special about me.
Yeah.
Right. And like I have other options, but like you're the one for me. No, I think the core of what she's saying is she's onto something here. I just think she's off in a couple of fundamental ways. The other thing I'm going to point out too, not just that it's not I choose you, but that you are my priority. But I'm also going to bullshit on this idea that men should be saying this. I don't think you should be saying this. I think you should be doing it, and have the saying of it be a kind of like a reminder of the doing.
Yeah. You definitely have to be doing it. I mean, of course. So, absolutely.
But through your actions, she feels prioritized, right? And then when you say to her, "You are my priority," she goes, "Yeah, I can feel that."
Right.
But a lot of men, will get sort of into this thing of like, "Oh, I just need to say that to her," and then they say it, and it doesn't land, and they go, "What the hell?" And it's like, well, because you're not doing it.
Right. It's like saying I love you and then beating somebody up after you say it. It's like,
sure, and I think a lot of abusive relationships, that's what happens. Is that like someone will emotionally or physically abuse their partner and then say, "But I love you," as if that matters, as if the saying of the word makes it so.
But what is it? Do you think? I mean, just to get into again the semantics of it, the words that she chose. What do you think the idea of hearing? Now she's a woman, so obviously she's speaking from a woman's perspective, whereas I'm not a woman, so I'm not necessarily seeing that the same way she does. So she finds importance to a woman in hearing that. Do you hearing I choose you? Do you think that's probably pretty accurate, that a woman would sense that and understand that also means I put you in priority and whatever, if they're performing that way. The I choose you, what she said in there too that I thought was kind of interesting is she says if you don't say that, then she might start thinking you've chosen somebody else, and that making her feel insecure and concern that your attention is going somewhere else if you don't say I choose you. No, you're the one I choose. I just want to make sure you know that.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, I would say that, you know, from the responsibility of the feminine in the relationship is, you know, you need to advocate for yourself and say, hey, you know, in that moment when I'm seeing you connecting with this other person, I'm not feeling prioritized or chosen by you. And what I'm needing from you in this moment is to feel that. I don't want to step on your toes. So, you know, if you want to go and have a conversation or even flirt with this person, but, you know, what I'm needing for me to be able to let that happen is for you to, you know, give me that I need there. So that's a part of, you know, putting this on the man. And this actually kind of makes me think of other times in which she's sort of done the same thing, but directing this toward men. And I'm just sort of advocating for, like, sure, right, men definitely need to step up, but, you know, you can advocate for your needs by framing them in that way to support the masculine. We've talked about this before about how, you know, never underestimate that men need to be kind of directed in a way. You know, they need a little bit.
Yeah.
So support them for success, and, you know, tell them what you need. The female fantasy is that you're going to know what they need without you having to ask. But that's just a fantasy.
Yeah. The oh shoot, I thought of something, now I forgot it. Again, the idea of choosing and letting somebody know that. I mean, this is also a very common narcissistic tactic.
Yeah.
Is to tell somebody, you know, you're the most important one. You're one here. And I mean, I have some friends in Hollywood that it was so impressive to be around them. They were big shots. They were really high up in their career, whatever. And for them to be paying attention to you at that moment, you were the most important person that's out. And you know, you can see again that tactic being used in relationships and romantic relationships of, like, saying, I choose you, honey. You are the one. You are the only one. And in fact, that's not true. And this is where we come into what you're saying about that you have to actually perform that. You actually have to behave that way. But again, putting a focus on this verbalization of things. And in couples therapy, this is really important. We have a thing that I think John Gottman came up with. It's called bidding for connection. And always putting out there, I want to communicate with you. I want to tell you affirmations. I want to tell you you're beautiful. I want to tell you that you're the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, and you're meaningful. I love you. You know, she says that that's not as important as I choose you. Okay, whether it is or not, I think it depends on your own sensibilities to what is important for you to hear. But it is important that we verbalize that we don't just do the act. We don't just act as if you are my chosen one, that we do verbalize it. Why is that important? Unless you don't think it is. I mean, maybe you don't.
No, I think it is. I think it is. And I mean, I'm not surprised that this is coming from her, because, you know, it makes me think a lot about the difference between, you know, the male and female romantic and pornographic fantasy. Women love narrative. They love a story. They want the porn to be drawn out over a whole novel before the bodice gets ripped. And they need to hear it. You know, it's a story.
That's a good point. That's a really
visual. They want to feel it, you know.
Right.
And so what she's saying is, like, you know, she wants to be told the story of this chosenness. She wants to feel like she's living in that narrative. And my guess would be, if I can be so presumptuous, that someone like Marie Louis von Franz would hear that and say, well, you're caught in this myth of, like, you know, you're the damsel in distress waiting for this knight, this strong figure who has his choice of many others but chooses you. And that sort of aggrandizes you, because the person who's choosing you is someone that you've put on a pedestal or on the top of the horse, you know, this high up figure. You know, there's a deep mythology around that. It's a lot of Disney stuff in that, you know, that this
well, that's archetypal. That's the whole archetypal concept. Yeah.
This guy with big dick energy looks at you, and you see yourself as lowly, because in the story you're sweeping the street and you're kind of low on the status hierarchy, but then he sees this great thing in you and chooses you over all of the well-dressed and wealthy women, and this sort of brings you into this place of being able to connect to your greatness through him, that's why this is a kind of patriarchal fantasy, right? As opposed to you being able to find your worth and value from within.
I think it's a masculine archetypal fantasy. The patriarch is a formulation of the culture, and yes, there's reason to believe that since Jesus, or around that time, there has been a tendency to move toward protecting themselves from the power of the feminine, because they're terrified of it. That has historically been proven again and again.
Yeah.
And that's how the patriarch in that archetypal sense, the shadow, was actually created through men trying to protect themselves from the power of the feminine.
Yeah.
And yes, okay, we see that here and there, but I think we have to be careful. I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying people in general have to be careful not to conflate that with the archetypal energies, because the masculine archetypal energies are going to be for the benefit of the masculine and the benefit of the person that is constellating them, and the feminine the same. So is that patriarchal? Okay, is the knight in shining armor a patriarchal symbol that protects the woman, that takes care of her, the dragon slayer that fights the dragon to save her? Is that patriarchal, therefore negative?
Well, it's both. If you want to look at it from an archetypal perspective, it's just the projection of animus onto an external figure. When that becomes institutionalized and mythologized, that's when it falls into the category of patriarchy.
Right. Oh, it's part of that story. Yeah.
And it's not even coming from your own personal, like complexes. It's coming from the archetypal. So you don't necessarily carry that wounding, but the mythology kind of brings you into that place of projecting animus onto this external male figure. Right. So if it colludes also with your wounding in the masculine, yeah. But to say that it's purely archetypal is to say it doesn't come from a place of wounding in you. It's that you're pulled into that fantasy in the archetypal because that's what's being served to you over and over again, like in Disney.
Okay, I'm not sure if I followed all that.
So without mythological influence, a woman wouldn't naturally project her animus externally onto a man. She may be able to integrate that herself. But if she's mythologized over and over again by these stories of women projecting their animus onto men, right, then she gets pulled into that fantasy. And
so are you saying there is not a practical benefit to the projection of the animus on externally onto the man? Because if you don't do that and you can essentially integrate all that within yourself, then there's no purpose in having a relationship.
No, but it's good. It's like good enough integration. So if from a woman's perspective, if I have enough of my animus integrated, I'm no longer seeking that in other men compulsively, right? So yes, there is a benefit of me projecting animus onto men and finding my wholeness in that. We're not even projecting, but like receiving it from them. The question is it coming compulsively because I don't have connection to it, or do I have good enough connection to it that I can go and seek what I can give myself externally, right?
Or can you differentiate between desire and need?
Yes,
in that sense.
I don't need it. That's exactly right. That's the difference between codependent bonds and pure bonds of love, right?
Exactly. And also, I categorize a lot of men in my practice as dragon slayers. There's nothing wrong with the concept of slaying the dragon, but when it becomes the need for the man to slay dragons for his partner, means he will seek out a partner that's always being attacked by dragons that are essentially the dragon slay becomes the whole focus of the relationship. So, that's where you get the broken winged bird that the man is compelled to take care of. That's a dragon slayer. And that's like everything in psychology, the problems that we have in psychology is expanded, sensationalized, whatever normalcy. It's normal for a man to project the anima to some degree. I don't even know if you call it projection at that point. I mean,
well, that's what I mean. I don't think it is. I
don't think it is either. Yeah.
But it's more like to a fully integrated anima for a man isn't that I don't need a woman, not at all. It's I have enough of that integrated in me that I'm not desperately seeking it and needing you to carry it for me because I can't. Right. And so my life is improved by having a female partner who can add that to me, can give me what I can't give myself in that.
Yeah. So going back to what she said, and I think this is important, and we can talk about that a little bit. This idea of following these patterns that can appear, if they're pathological, can appear to be need and appear to be compulsion, appear to be, or not appear, but they actually are those things. Okay. As opposed to the normal, healthy, whatever normal is, but the healthy archetypal engagement where the woman is the one that the man chooses to protect and to provide for, to be the masculine male with. And her submission to that, even though pragmatically or objectively there's no need for it. You know, a woman does not need to be protected in the culture. She's not attacked by hoodlums all the time that the man has to come in with his gun or his sword and slash. I mean, there may be times for that. Okay. But I think people get very confused to think, I don't need a man. I don't need protection. I don't need security. I don't need that kind of support. And it's like, yeah, you might not need it, but the archetypal systems definitely make you respond to it in a positive way. And if it's not present, or if you don't allow it, if you don't allow the man to constellate the natural masculine archetypes of being provider, being protector, then you're going to run into trouble with it. I mean, I see so many couples who work that way and it works for them, and they're not submissive. They're not falling back and saying, oh, I need this man to take care of me. But they respond to him as if that is part of the reason why they love him, is that he is protective. He is a provider. He has chosen them to be the one that he puts in that position. And I think that's really important. I mean, I fall into so many couples that are having trouble because they totally ignore the archetypal compulsions. They just ignore them. They think they're in a culture now where they don't have to be those things. They don't have to follow them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the core of what you're describing is, you know, when compulsion's masquerading as desire, you know, it feels like desire to me, but really there's a compulsion in that.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, the other interesting thing too is, now I'll sort of advocate for this sentence. I choose you, like, which means that I'm doing this of choice.
Good point.
But it's like, it's responsive. It's not reactive.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not obligatory.
No, it's like you choose. Like if I choose a partner, it means that I'm not compulsively attaching myself to them because I haven't been able to meet my needs, and I think you can meet my needs for me.
Exactly.
Right. Or the opposite, which was another thing that you were describing there too, which is this interesting concept of counter-dependence, which is when we're wounded in our attachments, we can get into this idea, well, fuck you, I don't need you or anybody else.
Yeah.
We can fall under this fantasy of I don't need anybody else. Counter-dependence.
The incel. Yeah.
Incel, but also feminist.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Big time. Yeah.
Feminist movement, which is, like you said, I don't need a man. And to a certain extent, I mean, sure. I mean, there are a lot of ways, you know, in which you navigate life without a man. But the reality that comes back though is that, but your life would be greatly improved if you did. Just like I could think I don't need a woman and I could probably survive and be all right without one, you know, in my life. But when I have a caring, loving female partner in my life, it's like, oh, wow, you can give me things that I can't give myself.
I think that's very important to point out, this idea between need, like what is need? Need is survival. Yeah. You know, I need a certain amount of water and a certain amount of food to sustain myself. But man, my life is going to be really limited if all I do is get my needs met. And that's it. You'll survive. Yeah, nobody needs anybody to survive. They will survive. But if you want the whole of life, or close to it, okay, you should be in a relationship and be able to deal with that and navigate through that. And, you know, Jordan Peterson even goes so far as say you have to have a family in order to what he says, if you don't have a family, you're only going to get to 2/3. You'll get to, you know, 66% of your potential as a human. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. Although I don't think it's a matter of filling up a bucket to like say the full life is a full bucket. There's a lot of different things that can make a full life that are not the same measurement. And people that have families don't get those things, and the people that don't do. You know, it's that kind of thing.
Well,
so I wouldn't be
sure, but I mean, if you look at how that's managed in queer communities, or you know, non-traditional, you know, relationships, it's that you have a chosen family. You can build a group of people around you that kind of fill that role. Sure,
you could
as a biological thing, but
absolutely.
There's a lot of people in the poly communities and queer communities that. And a lot of the times too, what's interesting is that it's not something that's done consciously. It's not like, oh, I need to go and build this. It's that they find that these people in their life fulfill them in that way, and they gravitate toward it and cultivate those relationships, which is great. But yes, I mean, I think this is the thing. We can only be sort of in denial of how much biology influences us before, we're kind of forced to face that reality. You can only transcend, the imminence so much before you're going to get snapped back. And there's just so far you can go. We also live in a time too, I think, where it's very easy to fall under this counter-dependence kind of trance, because it's so easy through technological means to feel that we can survive on our own and that's enough. You think you're mentioning incels. I mean, one of the ways in which you can fall under this trance of I don't need a woman is, well, I have an infinite amount of pornography at my disposal. Right. And you can live in a place of thinking that that's enough, that I don't need women in my life. I don't need the trouble because I have the fantasy. But then that comes crashing down on you pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
You realize that you can never get enough of what you don't really need, because you don't need a fantasy image. You need an actual partner. One who will hold you accountable and draw things out of you, because you have to be there for them on a human to human level. There's nothing, living in a fantasy. It terrifies me, the idea of these, like an AI girlfriend.
Oh my God.
Oh God, are you kidding me? So what? You're never going to learn to actually be in relationship. Right. You'll never learn what it means to be accountable for someone else's reaction to you. Right. You're never going to have your shadow drawn out, because the minute you don't like what the AI girlfriend says, you just delete. Just like the kids, the ghost now.
Well, there couldn't be anything more horrible to think about. And, obviously pornography is a precursor to that, but pornography only focuses on the sexual, obviously. And, it's easier to dismiss that as being, well, all you get all your sex from looking at porn. Most people would not say, although I'm sure there are a few, would not say, yeah, that's all I need. That's all that I need. Whereas with the AI partner, that's going to be a lot trickier, because it'll appear more like it's full, like it's fully rounded.
Your point about therapy, right? Is it like, how could relational existential therapy be under threat of AI? Not because it does it better, but because you'll never know, because you think what you get from the AI is good enough. And you're like, why would I go and spend, $225 on an hour-long session when I can get it for free?
Right.
Never realizing that that you're never going to get anything from AI because it's free. You didn't put anything on the altar. Why do you think you're going to get anything back?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like relationship. It's about sacrifice.
Yeah.
The Osho got himself into a whole lot of trouble because he had a critique of homosexual relationships, saying that they're too easy. And he goes, well, because think about it, if and how many people have thought this too, like men, straight men have gone, well, if I was gay, think about how easy it would be to get laid.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's really easy. And he goes, well, that's the problem, because it stops you from learning how to, mature in that way. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not that's accurate, I'm sure that there's plenty of pushback from the queer community that says, no, if you want to have lasting relationships with men, believe me, you're going to have to confront your shadow, and your male partners are going to confront that in you. But I think it's really interesting that Osho points that out. It's like, well, it's a lot easier. It is. And you're not going to have to go through like a kind of the similar kind of phase of humiliation that a lot of these incels, have had enough of.
Yeah. Yeah.
The problem being is that humiliation is actually what builds you up.
Mm-hmm.
If you can allow it to be humbling and not humiliating. But that requires ritual eldership, which is, one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
Just to be clear to everybody out here, I'm not saying that sexual relationships are inferior because they don't challenge you. I'm saying that Osho said that, and I find that to be an interesting point.
It is an interesting point, because it is true, again, from my perspective, that that males, one of the primary or prioritized elements of compelling them to go into relationship is sexual. And if you have that coming from both sides, then you can easily miss the point of what the sex actually leads to. Now, again, I know nothing about homosexual relationships other than what I've read or other than what I've experienced with clients, but But I do think of the clients that I've had and the problems that they've brought as couples into the therapy very often revolve around the fact that they're both driven initially by the same drive that's more biological than it is emotional, or that it is, divine. And you can get over that. I mean, you certainly can. Obviously you can. But I think it is harder. I think I would agree with that. I think they have to work harder at it as a gay couple than because it's kind of built in. It's built in for it to be challenging, and like what you're saying, where in the other, it's not as clear.
But you're making a point. Like, if you witness, or if you see gay couples in couples therapy, believe me, it's not any easier.
No, my God, no. In fact, it's harder.
I think so. I think there's a lot of.
I mean, there's a lot about it that is.
Yeah, I couldn't say whether or not it's harder or easier, but certainly you're dealing with different issues.
There are certain parts of it that are clearly more difficult, and again, I wouldn't argue that there's certain parts of it that are not, that are easier, that flow quicker and more intensely, but there's always give and take. I mean, anything that's good, there's always an equal bad to it. I mean, the yin yang thing. I mean, there's always
that's
something,
right. And that's one of the things that I hear from my gay clients and gay friends is that, well, sure, that there isn't. It's maybe it's easier to get laid, but it's actually much harder to find someone to settle down with and have a long-term loving relationship with. I mean, especially when a lot of people, it's like, I don't need to settle down because I've got plenty of romantic and sexual partners around. And I think that is a tough one, because at a certain point when you've kind of worked through that phase in your life and you're ready to just have a long-term partnership, and if that's harder to find, I get it.
Yeah.
So I think Osho was partly right. Obviously he says that in the early 1980s, before the legalization of gay marriage. So, I think it's been hard for him to conceptualize long-term homosexual relationships, because I think for him, they probably just didn't exist, or if they did, they didn't exist in the same kind of way that they do.
Weren't public, kind of. Yeah, and they probably weren't as public and obvious. Yeah, they weren't as. Now he wasn't gay, was he? Osho.
Rajneesh Osho.
Yeah.
Was he? He's the supreme detached, manipulative trickster type who is incredibly. What a character, man. Holy shit, Osho. The thing about Osho is that, like, if you watch like Wild Wild Country and you see that version of him, it's very easy to dismiss him.
Yeah, right.
This toxic guru kind of manipulator. And then if you know anything about esoteric knowledge or the psychospiritual, and you go and listen to his lectures and go and see the volume of the work that he produced and what he said, you go, wait a minute, now this changes things, because these people that didn't get sucked into just some, fucking charlatan, is not some con man, who's trying to sell you a plot of land in swampland in Florida. This man is a profoundly genius person.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Look, take one ancient text, the Dhammapada. He fucking lectures for like 100 hours on the topic. You're like, what what are you?
Yeah,
and well.
Yeah. I had it wasn't a good friend, but a good friend that I knew fairly well, and brilliant guy. I mean, spiritual, just brilliant. And I didn't find out till later that he was a follower. And I mean, that put a lot of credence in who he was following, because, and you watch those programs and whatever, they're all biased toward, denigrating anybody that's like that has that kind of power over people. Oh, he's a cult leader and he's crazy and he's fucking everybody. And it's,
I don't think he was fucking everybody.
I didn't even know if they said he was. I don't remember.
I don't think so.
I'm using that metaphorically.
Well, that's right. Well, usually if you're the head of a cult, the first thing the spoils of your victory is that you get to fuck whoever you want.
And take all their money.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's so attractive about a figure like him is that he is a spiritual trickster, and he comes for every sacred cow you can imagine, and he goes after like his takedowns of these sacred cows, like Gandhi or like democracy, or, he like, there's nothing sacred for him. He will just rip into whatever you hold sacred, and he does it in such a brilliant way. Yeah. But we have to sort of recognize that there's like the wisdom that he gives, and then there's the kind of the environment in which and how that was being used. So
yeah.
But anyway, let's come back to I choose you and Danielle and this whole concept. And one of the things for me about the way that she presents things is that it's like, I know that people are looking for easy answers, but I always feel like every time I hear that she says these things, I'm like, they need so much more unpacking.
Well, of course, that's not what she's doing, though. You know that. I mean, she is giving simple answers to things that are very complex, but that's her thing,
Right. And my thing is complexifying. I mean, that's literally
that's what we're doing.
We're supposed to do. Right.
That's why we take her simple comments and turn it into.
Sure, but my frustration always lies in, when it's presented as that simple, I think it can be taken in the wrong way. And look, if you're gonna have to simplify things in order to sort of bring people into an awareness. But I always worry that if you don't have the context for something, this is kind of the thing with AI, right? The people who are using AI to the best advantage right now therapeutically are ones who have been in therapy long enough to understand what they're reading and to be able to ask the right questions. It's just like, but my fear is that, when you ask AI certain kind of questions and you get into that stuff, if you don't have enough psychological awareness, number one, you don't ask the right questions. And number two, you're not quite sure what to do with the feedback that you get. And so a lot of this feels kind of like it's in that shamanic apprentice kind of realm of a little bit of knowledge will get you into trouble, right? You just enough to get yourself into a bigger knot, as opposed to being able to push past that and learn the complexities that will draw you out of that knot, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What do you think it is about telling somebody to go to their partner, their female partner, and say, I choose you, and to be very aware of what you're saying and what it means and whatever? Where is the downside in that? Other than the obvious that you don't really mean it.
My argument. I can imagine that there's a man out there who recognizes that he's been not showing up in a relationship, and he comes across this clip and he takes it in and he goes, yeah, that feels good. And he goes to his partner and says, my love, I just want you to know that I choose you. And she comes back with, choose me? What the fuck are you talking about? I don't need you to choose me. I need you to do the fucking dishes. And right. Shit. There's the backfire. And then he goes, what the hell? I thought that's what women wanted to hear.
You're kind of covering one of the biggest issues when you're a couples therapist is dealing with this kind of fake it till you make it idea. It's like, okay, if I can get your partner to say to you, I choose you, just to use this as an example, I want you to believe it until he starts, doing things that prove to you that it's not true. But that's the whole point, is that's a bid for connection. That is coming to somebody and saying, I don't care about the past. I don't care that I didn't do the dishes yesterday. I'm not going to think about that. Or it's more like she doesn't care that he didn't do the dishes yesterday, because of course he doesn't, because he didn't do them. So it's like, let's go into this. Let's start from scratch, start from 0 point. From now on, I'm going to say to you the things that I believe I'm giving you. I have chosen you. You are my love. You are whatever. And you're on the other side of that. You're not allowed to say, how dare you say that? Prove it or whatever, because you're going to just cause conflict. It's just going to go into conflict. That is very hard to do. It's very easy to say to a partner, to two people in your office, to say to them, you've got to fake it till you make it. You've got to put the past, you got to wake up. Like, what is that movie about the spotless mind or whatever, where Jim Carrey is in it, where he gets his, what is it?
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
Mind. Yeah. Where you wipe your memory out. You don't have any memory of your relationship. And, it's not quite like the movie, but this idea that you could do that, if you could do that in session, you could say, okay, all the bad things both of you have done to one another, I'm going to erase from your memory and only keep the good things, because you want to stay together. That's why you're in therapy. Okay. So here's some things to go by you may not have thought of. Here's one. Say, I choose you. That's one thing. Okay. Say, respect your partner. The various things that people might not be aware of because they were either taught not to be, because they're from a family that was abusive and father and mother fought all the time or whatever. So they have the first experience of relationship is completely screwed because of their family, or the culture does it. We're in this culture where, the archetypes are just completely ignored. And we're in this polarization, men are toxic, women are whatever. Okay. So you forget all of those things and you just start from scratch. It's like, look at one another as human beings and lovable and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure. I don't have that pill yet to give to people. So how do you fix that? Well, you need to relate to one another once in a while in your day. As if you can forget those things and not say, well, fuck you. You didn't do the dishes last night. So what do you mean you choose me? Who gives a shit? That doesn't make any sense to me. You have to, go to that and fake it until you start seeing results of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of the most effective interventions from a couples therapist I've ever seen or heard of is where they're like, the couples are bickering and they're like, okay, well, hold on. Just, all right, cool. Just pause for a second. What do you love about each other?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Look, I'll tell you what, rather than like fighting about this and hashing it out over an hour and a half, just put it to one side and why don't you guys go out and have dinner together?
Yep.
Right? And we're not going to argue about it. We're not going to try and get to the bottom of who's right and who's wrong and whose fault it is. And let's just go and connect. And taking that positive attitude, let's blow on the embers that are already here. And try and bring them back to life, and then let's not worry about all because as you said before, it's like a lot of that petty shit is like there's nothing behind it.
No, it's all content, it's all trying to change something that's more fundamental. Yeah, if you don't do the dishes, as an example, and that really pisses you off, if you're the woman and you think your man should do the dishes and he doesn't. That's not where the issue is. The issue is his disregard or his disrespect or his not choosing her, not putting her in priority, whatever. That's the issue. That's where it is. It's not he doesn't do the dishes or she doesn't clean the house or, blah, blah, blah. And couples love to just talk incessantly about the content of their relationship. Well, he did this yesterday and he said that, and it's like, well, okay, that's interesting to hear just to get an idea of where you guys are. But that's not where your problem is. If only he did these things, I would be okay. You ask a woman, men are not as good at this, but if you ask a woman, if you could change anything in him, what would you change? She's not going to say that he just does the dishes and mows the lawn every day. She's going to say that he listens to me and that he actually regards what I have to say. And that kind of thing. Men are not as quick at that. They'll say something like, "Oh, have sex more often." Which is important, but it's not really the depth. He what he wants is her to pay attention to him and to respect him and regard him. The sex is just a symptom for that. It's like,
well, like we saw in that clip that we talked about a couple episodes ago. The way in which you can trivialize men's desire for sex as being kind of bestial and kind of infantile or something, but really at the core of it, it's about feeling validated and loved.
Absolutely, 100%. Very little of it.
Like it's not to be sort of like
oh my God, no. And that's what happens now. That's what's happening because the culture is essentially incentivized that approach. And it's a very, very easy test. I mean, it's if you talk to a man that say was in a loving relationship and something happens to his partner, she dies or something happens to her, and all he does then is to get off his sexual whatever, his horniness by watching porn. And you say, well, does that work? Do you desire to be with a woman? I've never heard a man say, "Oh yeah, it works fine. I don't need a woman anymore. I don't need that. I don't need sex from somebody I love." I don't think there's a man that would ever say that.
But there is, and that's the incel.
Well, that's fucked up.
That's what I mean, pathology, to use that word correctly.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother issue. I'm talking about
like
relatively.
I said, and you're right, in healthy males, sure, for sure.
Right.
But that pathology, and of course, like in one of the aspects of that pathology is that the trance of counterdependence. I fuck you, I don't need you. Then if you're going to if women are going to reject me, then I don't fucking need you. I'll just use porn. But usually, if you look at it, the pornography content that the incels are drawn toward, it's about denigration and humiliation of women. And so for them, it's like, my sexual gratification is about, gratifying my need to diminish your capacity to have power over me.
Exactly.
Like, you think you have power over me? Well, now I have power over you.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's a big problem. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's out there. Unquestionably, it's there. But it's not in the mainstream of issues. It's like psychopathology of a sort. And I think the other end of it too with women is the same, but I think they have more reason for it. I think there's the culture has been relatively relentless to denigrate them and to bring them down from the patriarch thing and all that. So I think they have more rational reason to want to feel like they need to pull themselves away from any kind of need for men. It still doesn't work, but I think, and the culture supports it. I don't think the culture supports the other so much. I think the culture supports women being manless, and
well, yeah, but the core of that, though, in especially like in second wave feminism, is like, look, you can't, if you are beholden financially, if you are dependent financially upon your husband, right, and you have no other means of making a living and supporting yourself, you will be stuck potentially with an abusive man in a relationship that you can't leave, because you can't make, and like, what are you going to do? Before that movement, there was no way for you to make money on your own unless you wanted to become a prostitute, right? That was the only other way. And so women would be forced to stay in these abusive relationships because they had no choice. And so the core of that feminist movement was, we need women to be able to make their own money, for that fundamental reason of being able to have a way out of abusive relationships. Now, the positive aspect too is for women's self-determination, so that they can follow their own, desire to, find their place in the world and to have that kind of power as well. But I think primarily the core drive in that was, women didn't want to have to be in a situation in which they didn't have a way out and they couldn't support themselves, and so they were forced to be in.
But that is predicated, or that requires unhealthy males in order for that to be the case. If males were psychologically, archetypally healthy, they would treat their women like goddesses. There would be nothing that they would die for them in a second. They would do anything to support them. They would not be abusive. Okay, that is a result of all the things it's a result of. I mean, we could sit here for hours and list all the things that it's a result of. But women cannot be safe with an unhealthy man. And so therefore she does need to be able to support herself and take care of herself, because most, not sure if I can say most, but I would say quite a few men that are out there, and I would say most, are not healthy. And that's partially because it's turtles all the way down. You go down to every generation is fucked up as you go. So there's that. And I think the culture as well.
So, I mean, sure, we could list a lot of the things, but I mean, I'll pick on one. Patriarchy. Okay. Look, when men are living under the shadow of the masculine, when that's institutionalized, when that's running the show, and when men find themselves in a relationship with a woman where they have that kind of power, she can't leave you. It's fertile breeding ground for your shadow to come out, right?
Yeah.
Men will definitely be less drawn into their abusive shadow if they know that if you abuse a woman, she'll just leave you. When you know that she can't leave you, right? That's fertile ground for that to be drawn out of you, which is why when we talk about
which comes first? which comes first, the patriarchy that creates unhealthy men, okay, or the woman that knows she's dependent on the man and therefore he becomes absorbed by his shadow. It's like this goes way back where this started. Okay, but you're right. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but again, I'm assuming this idealistic, perfection or close to perfection of the archetypal male and female. There's a lot written of, and I don't know how much you probably read a lot of it. I haven't. But when you go back to, say, pagan cultures where the matriarchy was really is the essential power source, was the matriarchy, not the patriarchy. You have more balanced males that are healthier, but at least a little bit that we know that women had their place in the power structure, and that primarily because they were the creator of life, which is a pretty big deal. And men had their place, and there wasn't any kind of, and they were men, they were masculine men, they were all of those things, but you didn't have this pathology that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So
it's difficult territory, because I think the trouble that we find is that the archaeological and historical evidence for that is very weak.
Absolutely.
And so it's ripe, for a lot of fantasies. We'd like to fantasize about what it would be like to be under a matriarchy. Only just the reality is that there's just not enough. Now, someone like Maria Gambudis would kind of come back.
That's who I'm thinking of. Yeah,
got a lot of evidence that sort of proves it, but then
man, she stretches it, she like does, with the cave paintings, and
Look, I want it to be. I want her point of view to be valid and to be heard. But I think it just falls under, it doesn't sort of stand up to scrutiny. Now, maybe radical feminists would say because the scrutiny is coming under this patriarchal influence of the way that we think of history is patriarchal. Maybe fair enough.
Definitely.
Sure. I mean, I think you, under shadow masculine, shadow feminine, under these influences that have really become institutionalized. I think that nobody wins either way.
Yeah.
I don't think you really want to live in, under the dominant of either one. I think what we're striving toward here is to try to find a way to live under the balance of these two, where both are revered for the beauty that they are, and that we find that synergy of these two forces coming together.
I think, I said a minute ago that the matriarchy had the central power in pagan times. I don't think that's historically the way it's described. I think it is more like what you're saying. It's more of the balance. And I do know a bit about ancient Egypt and their cosmology and their pantheon. And I think it is more like that. And it's more of a balance between the masculine and feminine. And of course, the European early Egyptologists didn't have a clue, because they just ignored quite a bit of what they were discovering, because it just didn't fit into their Victorian worldview about the masculine and about Christianity in particular. So we've lost a lot of, or we ignored a lot of it. We didn't lose it, but we ignored a lot of what is there for us to study and understand. And I think in modern times, modern Egyptology is really kind of wiping away a lot of that European early discovery and interpretation of it, and is beginning to see the importance and the power of the feminine in that culture. I mean, it's pretty radical. And it is more balanced. I mean, each side of it had its own importance in the culture, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I know the origins of this concept of patriarchy is an interesting thing. I mean, some will take it back to Aeschylus and the Oresteia, and this the gods siding with the man, and that being the kind of the foundation for institutionalized patriarchy within the legal system. There's also different ways to read it, and I wonder too about obviously Christianity. You can see the roots of misogyny and the fear of the feminine engulfment within it. But I'm curious, like, to what extent is that just the influence of the satanic impulse, in the Roman Church, not Christianity?
Oh, I think it is. I think it's huge.
Purity, if such things exist.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the more alternative ways of looking at Jesus's ministry with Mary, both Marys, and her being at the Last Supper. And I mean, if you read the Gospel according to Mary, it's a pretty fascinating read. It's only 6 pages long. The rest of it is gone. But it's, he was very, very much an advocate for the feminine in his ministry. And you're absolutely right. It was all ripped out by the Catholic Church.
But even the Quran, it's funny. I remember reading the Quran maybe 20 or so years ago, obviously in English translation. But I remember being like, I went into reading that thinking that there would be, like, any kind of feminist interpretation of the Quran would be a real stretch. And I came out the other end of it going like, oh, no. There's a very clear argument for the Quran as elevating the feminine.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Now, of course, in practice, clearly not. No. But no, and I know some Muslim women who share that and say, no, it's very misunderstood, the Quran, and because you see what people do with it, just like the Romans do with the, when they get a hold of Christianity, you see how it's implemented. But if you sweep away all that and come back to the core, you find a very, very different thing.
Yeah.
And my point being too of what we're looking to do here is to recognize the divinity in both, to elevate both to their divine status, and to pull them out, integrating, one or the other. It's not about, this idea that there needs to be a kind of zero-sum game. I think that the ultimate sort of like movement of evolution toward wholeness is about recognizing that we there's no competition here. When we are in competition between the masculine and the feminine, everyone loses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No question about that. Yeah. So I choose you. Going a little deeper into that, and we've already talked about this, but this idea of I choose you to be the one that I physically as well as spiritually, mentally, emotionally put first. And
I give you all my resources.
I give you all my resources. And as protector, as lover, as advocate, whatever it might be, all those things are, in my opinion, again, as an archetypal psychologist, are all natural. Their archetypes are akin to instincts. They're more complex. They're more story focused, oriented than instincts are. Instincts are more biological and physiological. And Jung even said they were the same. I mean, Jung loved the idea that archetypes were the same as instincts, or at least the same as some kind of genetic propensities.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Anthony Stevens wrote that great. I think I mentioned this before and couldn't remember his name, but he wrote this great book on the biological basis for archetypes. And I haven't read it. I'm just sort of cracked it recently, and I can't wait to get in. But no, I'm gonna mention Simone de Beauvoir again because I feel like I have to in every episode.
You're gonna mention what?
Simone de Beauvoir, because like I'm such a big fan. But no, because the thing about that really I loved about the second sex is that she makes this point about like she breaks down this fundamental exchange of like physical security and resources in exchange for emotional and sexual needs. And there's just like this contract between the masculine and the feminine, right? The masculine needs procreation and, wants to have a family and wants to have loving care and wants to have sex. And the woman needs to be supported and cared for if she's going to do that, because she's going to carry a baby and be vulnerable. And there's this sort of natural exchange that she, points out in there, that I think, sure, that's not something that we can say can't be transcended. And in fact, from an existential perspective, we should always be looking to find ways to progress and transcend. But we always have to be grounded in that's the fundamental thing here, right? With couples too, it's like, women are constantly going to be pulled into doing the emotional labor because naturally, biologically, even I would say temperamentally, they're going to be better at it. And men are going to be pulled into survival needs. And that's the kind of exchange.
Right.
And if I'm letting you down by not maintaining survival needs, like not providing money or not, maintaining security or, maintaining the house, you're going to feel let down. Right. And if you're not meeting my emotional needs, if you're not doing that emotional labor, I'm going to be let down. What's important, I think, for men and women to realize that if you naturally gravitate toward those two things, that's okay, right? And if a man is trying to do the emotional needs and the woman's trying to, you know, make the survival needs, it's probably going to be harder that way.
Okay, folks, we just had a technical thing where we had a glitch, and I tried to cut it out. So, but we're going to pick up where we think we left off. So, William, why don't you finish your thought?
If I can.
Yeah, it's okay.
We're talking about, right, I remember now. No, we were talking about, you know, the biology and its influence.
Right.
But this fundamental thing in which, you know, men are seeking women to do the emotional labor in the relationship, and women are seeking from men to do the survivor labor. And, you know, sometimes we can find that if things have gone off the rails a little bit, it's because, you know, the man is being asked to do emotional labor. That's going to be a challenge for him, or the woman's being asked to do survivor labor. That's a challenge for her. And we put things in their right place and things go better. Now, obviously, people will think of me as sort of condoning some kind of traditional conservative view. And my point is, it's not traditional and conservative. It's biological. Give it a shot and see if your relationship improves. Now, if that doesn't work for you, if you're male-bodied but carrying a lot of the feminine, maybe you can do a lot of that emotional labor. Great. Go for it. Do it.
Right.
And likewise. But if things are not working, see if you can attend to those fundamental biological, you know, realities first. And it's not about playing traditional like roles. You don't need to have a woman who's like, you know, wearing a long dress and demure or whatever the word is, and, you know, kind of like submissive to her husband. And you don't. It doesn't need to be anything. It
doesn't
like
need.
That. Not at all.
It doesn't need to. I mean, the thing. Speaking of the conservative and whatever, unfortunately for the archetypal argument, the conservative viewpoint is more archetypal. Okay, you know, we could argue about that. Obviously, from the look on your face, you would like to argue about it. I believe that. I believe the traditional wife, as the conservatives describe her, is, or how they describe themselves, because there's a lot of women that are opting to go that way, is more in alignment with a lot of the archetypal powers. Not all of it. I mean, you can always go against the archetypes as long as you're conscious of it, and the culture is going to kind of force you to.
That's what trickster's for.
Yeah. The last thing that I'd like to say along those lines, and I don't know if I've made this clear as we've talked about this stuff, is that there really isn't a lot we have to do other than relearn things that are essentially opposed to the archetypal flow. Unlearn the ones that are getting in our way, that are not benefiting us. I mean, there's a lot of things that are, just like you said. I think archetypes do evolve over time, but just like the body, you know, we can't grow a third arm, even though we think that would be really useful. And we would think that would work better in the culture to have 3 arms. We can't just create that. I mean, maybe eventually that'll happen after 1 million years or so, but the same with the archetypes. We can't really radically change them. We can certainly work around them. And we can go, well, you know, if we're conscious of it. But all this stuff is natural. It's just like instincts are natural. If you were put on a deserted island somewhere and didn't know anything about making your own food or drinking water, you'd figure it out. You know, you would be driven to do it. Yeah. And the archetypes are the same way. So anyway.
I don't think archetypes evolve over time at all. I think
they might not. I remember in class, somebody asked that. Maybe it was you.
Maybe.
Somebody asked that in class, and I don't know. I don't think so. They may not. They may not. Yeah, they may not. Just like the instinct to,
how we meet them changes. You know, how we reflect them,
how we dress them.
Exactly, the cultural lens. I mean, even things like king, warrior, magician, lover. Those words are inflected through culture.
Yes, exactly.
There's no such thing as an archetype of a king. There is that archetype that we call king.
Yes. Yes,
yeah,
exactly. I'm glad you said that. I think that's really important.
Kingship, they're going to be like,
that's really important.
You can say sovereign, whatever. And in terms of, oh my God, you're going to provoke my trickster now, because if you think that the archetypal energies lean toward conservative, archetypal trickster is here to thwart that. With, you need absolutely to have both. And the minute that anything is too fundamentally conservative, that trickster energy is going to provoke it. When things are too fundamentally progressive, trickster is going to provoke it back. And so there's a natural dance between the two. But coming back to, you know, like a simplicity and a grounding in archetypal energies, to the extent that they are connected to biological energies, yes, that is a kind of conservative way of coming at it, because it's about like privileging the plane of eminence, not the plane of transcendence. But the bird flies on two wings.
No.
But the hair-raising thing that you're going to get into when you get into that is just like what we saw during COVID, where there's a battle between the freedom people and the safety people, neither one of them realizing that freedom and safety are equally important to human survival. And that if you think that freedom is more important than safety, you're wrong. And if you think safety is more important than freedom, you're wrong. And then you get this butting of heads. Mm-hmm. And the archetypal attitude is to stand back from that and watch and say, oh, isn't that interesting? You both being in this trance is creating this conflict when you don't realize that archetypally those things live on an equal plane. Mm-hmm. Archetypes are neutral. They're not. There's not one better than the other. There's not one more powerful. Right. And there's not one that's good and one that's bad. There's integrating and disintegrating in the shadow. But anyway.
Very well put. Thank you. I think that's important. Okay, folks, we're going to wrap it up. And I hope you got something out of that. And please comment. Please let us know. Write to us. Write in the comments here. Please, if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe. Keep us going. Let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. That would be great. And so I and William will see you next week. Next time.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Take care. Bye.